Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. My name is Danon with Headstrong Hats, and over the past 13 years I've become somewhat of a hat scientist, and in today's video I'm going to go over what I've learned from making beer box hats out of golf ball boxes. So if you've been following my channel, you'll understand how I create these hats by taking a box, kind of cutting it up and rearranging the logos to where they kind of line up differently than they would if they were on a traditional 18 or 24 pack can box. And I'll seal it with Scotch laminate, and that kind of holds all those seams together and keeps everything from separating, since they are put together instead of just being a solid sheet. And one of the challenges that I've had in dealing with these Titleist hats is the box is not a traditional material that is printed onto the cardboard, and it's also a different cardboard itself. So after making this one last year, took it out in the driveway, hosed it down with the water hose, trying to prove a moot point about waterproofing. I like to have some water resistant on the hat, and you can see it kind of got a little bit wrinkled. And also, one thing I noticed with these Titleist boxes is when you shape the brim of the hat and it causes these creases right here, the laminate does not stick as well as it would to a beer box. And when you crease it up like this, the laminate tends to pull away, especially in certain areas where there are creases in the box that are designed for the box to actually be shaped and formed to make the golf ball box. So I've just kind of had this one sitting around waiting to see how the weather does with it in my garage, the humidity, the heat, the cold. And I came up with another hat with almost the same process of making everything. I did reinforce these four seams right here with an extra piece of laminate, and by adding that extra little bit of thickness there, it creates a little bit of an air gap where the laminate wants to pull away from it. And still ended up with the same problem where the laminate pulls away where it's creased right here. I tried to heat it up with the heat gun and then help form the hat, and still ended up having the problem mainly on the top. Underneath, the brim is being folded this way, so obviously it's going to create tension from underneath and come up, and then that leaves excess material on the top that has to go somewhere. And with the stitching and everything, there's just nowhere for it to go or spread, so the last thing it wants to do is just kind of bunch up where those creases are. I had the opportunity to make a couple more hats with some boxes that I was given. They were straight from the printer, they had not been bent, and I changed up a couple things on them. I did not add the extra protection here on these seams. What I did is I used the heat gun to heat it up prior to bending it, and that allowed it to shape in the V like it's supposed to without breaking the laminate, because sometimes the tension on that laminate, when you crease it like this, it'll just pop right there. So that's basically a waste, because once you've broken it here, there's nothing you can do to fix it. It's just an open gap. And also, these boxes are very delicate in the way that they scratch. So the laminate is there not only to hold all the pieces together, but it's also there to keep it from being scratched or nicked, because this black material here, if it gets nicked, there's a chrome layer underneath it, so that will damage it. And I did the same with these two, but what we're going to do is take a close look at the differences of all these different additions and where we're at, and we'll see if anybody has any ideas of what could be done to, number one, keep the laminate from peeling up, which in my experience there's almost no getting around it, and also see if you guys think that if the juice is worth the squeeze. Like, is it worth spending 2.5 hours working on a hat, making something like this, and then still have flaws in it? So let's hop over to the table and I'll show you guys how the Titleist boxes actually behave once they're cut, and how they bent, and we'll put some laminate on there and I'll show you guys how easily it peels off, even though it's the most sticky and durable laminate that I found on the market. So let's hop over to the table and we'll check it out. Alright, so first let's give you guys a good up close look at how the first water hose Titleist hat ended up coming out. You can see where I added these extra strips of protection right here, and how there's a little bit of an air gap underneath. Hope the camera can pick that up. But it did end up creasing right here in the middle. It's got some air gap under here, and also under the bottom where the water got into the hat through the stitching. It bubbled up pretty good, which is not awesome. But we also have some bubbling here, and this is a section here where I messed up on the whole laminating process and was not able to recover it, because once you start to peel it off, it peels the coating from the Titleist box off of the cardboard, and the ink comes with it and does not allow you to just peel the laminate off. But all in all, this hat is still in pretty good shape, I guess you could say. I mean, other than the wrinkling. So let's take a look at the next one I've made. We're still dealing with a little bit of the same problem. Oh, by the way, I just keep these around the hat to help keep its shape. But I think one of the problems I was causing was when I was shaping the brim, I was kind of curling it all the way through here instead of just possibly doing one solid bend like this. And by trying to create that curve, I'm creating more creases, especially here in the Titleist logo. And all of these creases right here create the opportunity for the laminate to peel away and separate from the label. And I'm not keen on that, because my whole goal is to try to make these the best that they can be. And we've got some peeling here. And of course, there's really nothing on the bottom to speak of, because when the laminate is stretched this way, it's pulling tension, and it's obviously not going to bubble up. But when you're creating tension on the top, the laminate has nowhere to go, and it just creates enough pressure where the laminate will pull away from the label. This is what the material that gets sent to me. It is the box prior to being folded, and you can see that it has these creases right here where it would be folded and shaped into the box. And during my process of making the hats, I always end up cutting this down and piecing everything together anyway. So there's parts of this box that I don't use, but obviously I would use this one. I use these small sides for the top of the crown, and I want to show you guys some of the characteristics of this box. You can see that it's a white cardboard. It's not a traditional like beer box type cardboard, and once it gets bent, it tries to automatically separate from the label itself. It's already peeling right there. Just like that. So it's very delicate in that manner. And also, I want to show you kind of how it can't really be torn. So if this were a normally printed box, it would just tear. But Titleist spends probably a lot of money on these boxes to be produced, because you can see it's some kind of foil. And that foil does not like to be merged with my famous Scotch self-sealing laminate. And one of the reasons I like to cover it with laminate is because any kind of nick on the box will create this marring and scarring that will happen. And the laminate just adds that protection to where if you were to throw it in the back of the car or truck, or you're out at a party and it gets kicked or something like that, you obviously don't want to have your hat scratched. So I always try to put some kind of covering on it. I've tried to use spray, what do you call it? Mod Podge, and all that does is create flaking. Once the paint dries and you go to bend the hat, it flakes and peels right off. So we're having a real hard time trying to figure out the best way to make something stick to these. And it's probably a moot point trying to even do it, because I'm really having a hard time getting to being successful at it. So this is just a little section of laminate here. I'm going to put it on. And I typically use my cold roller, but for this purpose we're just going to use my little brayer tool and kind of put it on there really good. And you can see if it's not put on there with a professional tool, you see where I put my fingernail on there. You can see all those little marks, hopefully. But as you take this hat, or take this box and bend it, you're going to get some creasing there. And as you can see on the finished product of this hat, everything turned out fairly decent. I would say it's 98% perfect. I did not put any reinforcement on these joints right here, because just that little bit of extra layer of laminate under here to protect that joint created enough of a force to where the laminate would want to peel off, just like in this scenario right here. It's trying to pull away from those edges. So I didn't do that. I just used my heat gun. I warmed up the surface a little bit, and then I was able to fold it and prevent the laminate from cracking and breaking right there. So the flaws on this particular hat seems to be one right here. You can see the air bubble kind of pushing up right there, and they seem to always pop up anywhere there's a crease of the box. And obviously on the bottom everything is good to go, nice and clean. There's a little bit of peeling up right here, and we'll take a look at the other one I made. This is the second one, and we're dealing with a little bit of the same thing. It just seems to be where the box is creased, and I try to form it up. And one of the things I did not do on these hats was try to curl it on this whole part of the rim. I just took it from this line right here and bent it straight up. So that seemed to work out better by not creating as much wrinkles throughout the brim of the hat, but we're still got a little bit of them pushing through right here. And of course on the bottom is the same. And on the third, I would say, successful hat, this is the result that came out of it. Everything is laid down fine. There's not much bubbling. We got a little bit of bubbling here where the laminate wants to peel up a little bit, but it sounds like my neighbors are deciding to cut grass, so I'm going to try and wrap this up pretty quick. Yeah, so I think this is going to be about as successful as I can be with them. I even treated the box with some rubbing alcohol, trying to keep it super clean to where the laminate would have every opportunity to stick to it like it is expected to. So yeah, in comparison to the first one of the first ones I've made to the second one, they, to the naked eye and probably to somebody that doesn't really care, they look, you know, obviously about the same. However, I think that the quality of this one came out a lot better, regardless of the fact that we just got a little bit of bubbling here. And it just makes, I'm just really curious about it, because it never happens with my normal beer boxes. You know, this one's been sitting in my garage for 4 months now, and I've got some bubbling as far as the label goes, but the laminate is still stuck precisely like it was when I put it on there. So it's just, these boxes just behave a whole lot differently than a traditional beer box do, and it shakes my confidence, especially because these are probably the most demanding hats that I've ever made, and I struggle with putting them out there because I want them to be perfect, and I don't think that they can be. So if you guys have any suggestions, I will gladly take them and try them out when I get some more boxes. I've unfortunately exhausted all of the boxes that I was gifted to me, except for one little lonely leftover box that I have as a little keepsake. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoys watching, and let me know in the comments if you have any insight, and maybe give me some ideas on what you want to see next. Thank you.